Hello and welcome to Zentangle Untangled, class number 31. We're going to get started. I'm just going to draw a box like I do every time. I'm going to make this one a little bit smaller because this first design that we do takes a little bit of time. So now I'm going to, actually I need to grab a pencil, so hold on one second. Make sure you have a pencil for this part. I'm going to draw this part a little bit darker so that you can see it in the video, but you want to make sure that when you do it, you draw it lightly. So I'm just drawing a line straight through my section. It can be anywhere you want it to be. And then on one side, I'm going to draw these slightly diagonal lines that kind of meet at the point. And then I'm going to go the other direction, basically the opposite direction. So it should make it look like a close-up of a leaf, where you have kind of those veins through a leaf like that. I mean, it can go in any direction, so it doesn't have to be, exactly how I have it drawn. So now this first part, I would recommend that you use a marker of some kind, or if you have a pen that has kind of like a bigger tip on it, a big pen probably won't work so well for this. But along the pencil line, I'm going to do a line of dots. If any of you know what pointillism is, this is just a series of dots. So that's how you're going to fill this in. There's not going to be any straight lines, no dashes or anything like that. It's just going to be a bunch of dots. And I'm going to fill it in on the line to be the darkest, so that means the dots will be the closest together. And then in the point here, I'm going to kind of make it a little bit rounder so that the point is, I don't know, kind of like arched a little bit, so the point is really dark and then it kind of comes up at an arch and goes around. And then as I go back, or towards the top of my square, I want to put less and less lines in it. So then what you do after that is you go back with your pencil, with your eraser, and get rid of the pencil. You don't have to do that till the very end, so don't worry about that too much. So now we're going to go on to the rest of it and do exactly the same thing. Again, I always do well, I do the center point, I guess, first, just because I do. And then I draw my dot line all the way out. And these should be very close together. The closer the lines are together, the darker it will look. So make sure that you have your lines, your dots very close together when you're doing them on the pencil line. Alright, so for this last section, you may not have this. The point would actually be way out here where my middle finger is on my left hand. So you have to kind of imagine that that's where the darkest set of dots will be, kind of in that point there. But it's imaginary, so you won't see it. But now I'm going to draw my dot line on this one last little thin area here. You might not have that, of course, if yours just goes in a different direction or you've done your straight across or whatever you have. So I'm just going to fill in this last part here, and then we'll go on to the next one. So you don't want to forget these very end ones. Even if you don't have a line there, you don't want to forget to put some dots in there, otherwise it will just look really, really odd. Especially on this one side, because it would just be basically an open, solid white panel. So these dots are going to be pretty far apart, but I'm going to make them a little bit closer as I go to the right side of this square here, a rectangle, excuse me. So something just like that. Of course, you can try other shapes too. You can overlap circles or do whatever you want. Alright, so now for my second design, I'm going to just draw another rectangular box, whatever you have. And I'm going to put a grid in here. So it's just going to be a dot grid. Whatever space you go down, so you can kind of see that my spacing is the same as I go down. I know it's a little bit hard because these dots are a little small. I should make them a little bigger, but I'm probably going to get lazy and make them actually smaller. So whatever spacing I have going down, I want the same spacing going out to the right. So you can choose whatever size you want. I tend to make it probably about, I don't know, around a ½ inch, maybe not quite that much. It's just kind of how my brain likes it. So whatever size you have, I wouldn't make it too small, because then you're going to see a lot less detail when you do the actual sections of the weave, and then the other problem is that you're going to have to draw a lot of them. So sometimes these weaving patterns can get a little tedious. They look very, very cool, but sometimes it can be a lot to draw them in. So just decide how much you want to tackle with that. So on this outside row, I'm not going to see too many. Like that one, kind of see it, kind of not. So I guess it depends on how many you have. So in this top section here, in the very first column, I'm going to draw a line that arches to the right, and a line that arches to the left. Below that, I'm going to go the other way, and then flip back and forth between arching to the left, and arching to the right, and then arching to the left, and then to the right. So you're basically going to make a wavy line, but you want to connect the dots. So now the next column, you're going to do the opposite. I'm going to go out, and then in, and out, and then in. You want to kind of have these bubbly sections, and then these narrow sections. So now in the next column, I'm going to go back to my first line. Go in, out, and so on. And when I mean in towards my hand that I'm drawing with, and then out means away from my hand that I'm drawing with. So that's how I say it in my head. So you can already tell that some of my dots are not completely in line, and you'll notice it doesn't really make too much of a difference, but like that one there is a little bit wonky shaped. So when you do your grid, you want to try and get it as close. I don't use a ruler because it kind of takes the fun out of it to use a ruler for me, but I just want to see how I do. But if you're doing something where you want to keep the design, it's not just practice for you or doodling, obviously you'll want to be a little bit more precise, especially with these weaving patterns. These are getting kind of off to the side here. Whoops. So I have one last one on the end here. And again, you might not have this many rows. That's just fine. Something just like that. I'm going to turn my paper a quarter turn, and I'm going to draw, and I just made a mistake. Ignore that one. Silly. Okay, so in the bulbous areas, the ones that are wider left to right, you're going to draw a line that goes in. So in, and in, and in, and in. And again, I mean in, like in towards each other. And then I'm going to skip a row and do the same thing. So anytime that it's bulby, well, in this case it would be top to bottom because I'm looking at it this way, but you can see that you skip one each time. Alright, just like that. I have a little one at the bottom here. You might not have that section, of course. Alright, so now in the next column, I'm actually going to just draw right over the top. So now I'm going to go the other way. So essentially, what we did in the beginning where we drew the columns down, you do the exact same thing going across. It just depends on how you draw it. So it's up and then down and up and then down and up and then down. So if it's easier for you to draw an entire line and go all the way across with the up and down sections of your line, that's just fine. For me, it gets it kind of messes with my eyes a little bit. So I tend to do sections and then I fill it in. I do encourage you to take your time when you're doing these so that you don't make a mistake like I did on my very first horizontal arch there. So just make sure that you are taking your time and thinking about which way you have to draw your arch. Something just like that. So you can kind of see it's an over-under type of pattern. Once we put the pattern on there, the actual lines on there, it looks like a little bit more, and you can add some shading and all of that. I'm just going to draw a large one of the pattern that we're going to do. So this is basically like a bulb on the top and bottom, and then the middle is skinny. I'm going to draw a line in pencil. This is an imaginary line, obviously. I'm just drawing it so that you can see it. I'm going to turn this, I think. And the way that I draw the lines to fill each section is anything on one side of this imaginary center line goes one way, and everything on the other side arches the other way. So you can kind of see that it's like a divide right in the middle. You can certainly change that. You do not have to have them filled just like that. It's entirely up to you how you want to do it. But essentially all the pieces on this design are exactly the same. So you can work in one direction and then turn your paper and work in another direction, or whatever it is that you want to do for that. I'm just going to keep going. I'm going to fill up the entire thing. Alright, so there's the pattern. Again, you can make these as large as you like. You can go diagonally across your paper, whatever it is you like. So I'm going to turn mine to the side. I'm going to use this larger side edge here that's open, and I'm going to draw a wavelength. And by that I mean, it's not going to be like a flat thing. You want some good hills and some good valleys. You don't have to make it this large. You can certainly make it way smaller than that, but just get a couple. So off the back side, I'm going to go up and leave a section. I'm going to draw a spiral. Now you can see that my spiral comes beyond my hill point. I'll do the same thing on the bottom, going exactly the same direction, and my spiral should come on beyond my hill. So out over the edge of the hill, and then draw a spiral. And the spiral can be as fancy as you'd like. But you want to make sure that you have a gap between this line. Mine just kind of ends there. And then this one over here will have kind of like a half spiral. But you want to make sure that you have a gap in between the spiral and the actual wavelength. So now I'm just going to pick whichever one. I'm going to go backwards along my wavelength and kind of draw a C shape. And then I'm going to fill in this entire section with just some slightly arched lines. Nothing too fancy. You can do that however you want. If you want them to go straight, if you want them to sort of fan across that curve, it's up to you. But I like the arched lines, so it's up to you what you want to do. I'm going to do this other top one too, since I'm in the same direction. And then I'll fill it in with the lines again. And of course you can fill these in however you want. You don't have to use the lines. I kind of prefer the lines myself, but you certainly don't need to do that. Alright, I have this little one here. My spiral is actually beyond this point, so I'm just going to kind of fill it in with some lines. Normally I wouldn't end it like that, but this is just for the sake of the video, so I'll just show you that you can have like partial spiral if that's what you need. Something like that. I'm going to flip it over and do the same thing in the reverse. So it's going to be a backward C coming off of this one. And then the reverse arches. Like that. And the same thing on these last two. I'm going to do reverse C. And you want that C to come off the spiral. You want it to be a good curve on that. So it's a good C shape or backward C shape, whichever direction you're going. These lines that are filling in this little bump, they're kind of just some slightly arched lines. So actually, you can draw however you want. I'm not going to tell you what to do. You can do whatever you want. That's just how this one is drawn. And then I have one more partial section here. So something just like that. Again, you can do whatever you want to the design. But I do hope that you enjoyed our patterns for today. I do hope that you're all staying healthy and that you're all staying happy. That's very difficult this time of year, especially since we can't be out with our family and friends. But anyway, I do hope that this calmed your mind a little bit If you do wish to venture out, we are still holding live classes on Thursdays from 5:30 to 6:30. You just need to call to register for that. I hope that you have a wonderful day, and I will meet you back here again next week Thursday for another Zentangle class. Bye-bye!